Hello and welcome. This is What Art School Didn't Teach You, the Business of Being an Artist. I'm your host, Elizabeth Guilford. I'm a full-time independent artist, and this is my space to share my knowledge and share information with you that I wish I would have known fresh out of art school, all of the business side of being an artist. And last week on the podcast, we talked a little bit about social media and the role of social media in my art business, at least. And so if you haven't listened to that episode yet, that would be a good one to go back and listen to. It's kind of like all the basics of social media, why it's good for artists, and how it can help you in your business. In that episode, I touched on the two main roles that social media plays in my business, one of which is growing your audience, and the second is building trust and connections with your existing audience. So today in the podcast, I just want to talk about that role number one, which is growing your audience. And then next week, we can talk about building trust and connections. Now, I think both of these pieces are equally important. So growing your audience is awesome and it's great. You know, the more eyes that are on your work, the more likely that you're going to be able to connect with people who are interested and want to purchase from you. But I think this is like where most artists kind of are focused. They're focused on going viral, they're focused on growing their following, and they don't always think about the second half, which is building trust and connections with your existing audience. And I really think you need both strategies together in order to do well on social media and in order to actually grow your business. Because in reality, like if we just grow our business and you have thousands and thousands of people following you, that's great. But what if they're not really people who connect with you and your art? You know, a lot of times we call those vanity metrics. We're not really interested in vanity metrics here. We want a community of people who really connect with us and connect with our artwork, because that's when social media becomes a lot of fun. You get to get onto social media, connect with like-minded people. You get to talk about your artwork kind of in an open and relaxed way and make connections with people. So I think just want to kind of preface this by saying we're going to talk a lot about growth today, but I think both roles are equally important, and I recommend kind of implementing a little bit of both in your business to kind of balance everything out. So if we're just talking about growth, I know of three main ways that you could grow on social media. Now, I'm sure there's more, but these are the three ways that I have implemented in my business. And the first is paid advertising. So this is actually like a huge piece of my business. It's a big business strategy, and most people don't like to start here. So I don't necessarily recommend you start right out of the gate with paid ads unless you really understand what you're doing with your ads and you have a very targeted, specific offer to send out and to advertise with those paid ads. So I've never seen artists be successful if they're just using ads to do boosted posts, or they're just doing a bunch of traffic ads, trying to send more traffic to their social media accounts. You really, if you're going to do paid advertising, you want to have a very specific offer in place to help somebody who's cold traffic, they don't know you, they don't trust you, they don't know anything about you, to then give them enough trust. And, you know, the offer is set up in a way that it's very low risk. Generally, this is a really low cost offer that you would then advertise with paid ads to. So I could talk about, for me, this is a sales funnel, and I could talk about sales funnels for literally like the rest of my life. It's my favorite business topic to talk about. So we can go more into sales funnels in the future, but just know if you're wanting to grow your social media and you're wanting to grow your business, paid advertising is a great option. It's not normally one that people start with right out of the gate, because the other organic methods that I'm going to talk about here in a minute, those are free. So a lot of people like to start with something that's free. All it takes is your time. And then once you have built up a little bit of a following or you've built up some sales, then you can start investing into paid advertising. Now, to be totally transparent, I didn't do it in this order. I started with paid advertising, and then I started with organic marketing after that. So you really can do it both ways. It's just the understanding that if you're starting with ads, you know that you're going to be paying for that traffic up front. So keep that in mind. And then again, if you are doing paid advertising, you want to have a very specific offer structure. You want to have a very specific product that you're offering. It's not just paying for boosted posts or paying for traffic. So if that's something you're doing as a new artist, I highly recommend that you don't do that unless you've had success with it in the past. I've never found them to be super successful unless you have that ad paired with a very tailored offer. So I think those two things kind of have to go together. Now, as far as the organic side of things, this is where most artists like to start because, like I said, it's totally free. All it takes is your time and energy to put in to social media. Within the organic marketing strategies, I kind of think of two main strategies. One is trying to go viral, trying to get a lot of views on your posts. And the second option would be I hesitate to use the term influencer marketing because I think that kind of gets a bad rap, but influencer marketing is part two. So I'll talk about it and explain it a little bit more in detail so you can understand, how it works. But that's the best kind of term that I can think of to use. So going viral. So I'm going to be fully transparent here. I have never gone viral on social media. This is something that is kind of newer to my business that I've been thinking about and trying to implement strategies in order to grow organically because like I had mentioned before, most of my growth has come through paid advertising. But, my thought process is if I can also grow organically, just taking my time and not spending money on ads, it would be great to do a mix of both. So for my business, this is something I've really been thinking about recently and I've been focusing on recently. And if we are just looking at getting eyeballs on your content, getting as many people to view it as possible, in that scenario, if that is your goal, then you want to be following the guidelines of that social media platform that you're posting on. So you want to be doing whatever they are recommending you do to grow. So, for example, I'm on Facebook and Instagram, and what Facebook and Instagram is currently promoting and what they are recommending that you do if you want to grow is Reels. They are promoting Reels right now, and this changes often. So if you watch this video in a year, or you listen to this in a year from now, there might be a different technique or a different strategy that those social media platforms are recommending, but you want to go with whatever they are recommending. So right now, if you're listening to this, in real time, that is Reels. So I think people get intimidated when they think of creating Reels or creating content for social media. And for me, I don't want to talk too much about actual content creation because I am not an expert. But for my own business, I have been researching a lot of, reel content. How do I create reels? How do I make good reels? How do I get good at filming? How do I get good at editing? These are all questions that I had as somebody who's new to creating video content. I've created mostly photo content for the last 3 years and just kind of dipping my toes into Reels now. I will say there is tons and tons of free content out there to help you get started. So I don't think you need any kind of fancy course. I don't think you need something to teach you any more than just going to YouTube and literally just searching for how to create good reels, how to create aesthetic reels, how to get better at filming, how to get better at editing. You could go down a rabbit hole on it. Don't get too deep into it, kind of get the basics and then be ready to start practicing and implementing. But I learned a lot of tips just from watching videos. You can even get as specific as looking up how to do it on your iPhone or how to do it with your camera, and then even looking up specific editing software so you can get really specific and learn a lot of tips and tricks. Now around Reels specifically, I have really had to shift my mindset around creating Reels because I used to think of them as kind of an admin task that I, had to sit down, I had to edit, I had to create a reel, I had to figure out, what I'm going to post it about or figure out tomorrow's reel. And I found if I could switch my mindset into reels are a creative process, reels are an extension of my creative practice. Like when I'm creating my paintings, I'm also, taking short snippets of videos to create my reel. And that's made it a lot more fun if I think about it as like this creative project. And, I find that I've gotten a lot better at like being able to take little snippets of photos and videos while I am creating my artwork. But I've recently started thinking about that editing process as a creative process as well. And it's made it a lot more fun if I just literally think about it as like, yeah, this is like a fun creative project where I get to put together videos and I get to choose how I want to showcase my work. I get to choose the mood that people feel based on the music that I choose or what I say or what clips that I make. And it's really made it a lot more fun. So if you can, try to shift that mindset from, oh my gosh, this is like a boring admin task that I have to do, to this is an extension of my creative process. And I also get to be creative with how I showcase my work as well, not just how I create it. The other thing about reels and video content is there's lots of different styles and there's different ways that you can create video content and reels. And I think we overlook that. Like there is a lot of flexibility. There's a lot of different ways you can do it. And here I don't think it's like one specific way that you should be creating reels, or I don't think you should always just like go through and use trending sounds, or you should go through and do the trendiest, most popular thing. I think that doing some experimenting here and playing around, trying different variations of creating content, see what feels good for you, because what feels good for you is going to be the easiest for you to stick to and to continue doing, week after week. So for me, I really like to talk to the camera, which I've mentioned before. So you can do sit down, talk to the camera videos. You can do edited videos where you're showing your process or showing your art process. You can do voiceovers where you're painting and you're talking over it. There's lots of different options. I recommend experimenting and playing around with different variations. And then as much as we don't like to hear it, really the reality of creating content is you just have to practice it to get good at it, right? So just like I have to practice sitting here talking to the camera, recording a podcast for you to listen to, I have to also practice creating reels. And my first couple reels are going to be bad and they're not going to be very good. And nobody's going to see them. They're not going to get any views. And instead of getting, down and upset about it, just know that that's part of the process. And honestly, I found when I started, it was a little bit of a relief to be like, oh, it's okay. Nobody's going to see this. Like 5 people might see this. It's not as scary, that I'm like, wow, I'm not really good at this yet. And, if you're not very good at it yet, then the algorithm's probably not going to show it to very many people. And that's okay. You will start to get better. You will start to gain more confidence. And as that happens, you will also see the numbers starting to reflect that. So my biggest tip when it comes to reels, and again, like I said, I am not the best at this yet. I am still in the learning and experimenting phase myself. But the biggest thing that I can recommend that I see when I've spoken with other artists and kind of reviewed their social media content is because we are really invested in our art, we tend to try to show longer clips of the painting or the creative process. And for reels, generally you want really short snippets of videos, literally like 1 second long. So it sounds really short, and it is, but if you're going to show a whole painting in like 20 seconds, you just want little snippets of that painting process to just give people kind of an idea of what your work is about. And remember, if the goal is growth, these reels are going to be sent out to people who don't know you. They don't know about you. They don't know about your work. They don't know about your creative process. So it's okay if they just get like a little snippet or a little taste of who you are and what you do. It can spark their curiosity. Hopefully then they will follow you, and then you can share more more details with them. You can share more photos. You can share more carousels. You can share a little bit more about yourself and go a little bit deeper. But generally, for Reels, the idea is growth. They're shown to people who are not your followers. And so maybe, one of your Reels is just you introducing yourself. Maybe it's telling about the type of art that you like to create. Maybe it's showcasing a painting you've been working on, But again, I think that was a mistake that I made when I first started making Reels, is I was creating the Reels like I was talking to my current audience, and they weren't really seeing those Reels as much as strangers. So keep that in mind, that if you are creating Reels, a lot of times the people who see them don't know you. So it's okay to introduce yourself. It's okay to repeat yourself sometimes, reel to reel, because not everybody's going to see the same content. It's okay to talk about the same topic or the same painting or the same piece of art more than once. So don't feel like everything has to be like perfectly unique. The big thing here is repetition and practice, that the more you do this, the better you get at it. So for me, for example, we are getting ready to move into May, and I am doing a 30-day reel challenge where I am going to try to post a reel to TikTok every single day and see how it goes. And I'll have to keep you guys updated in the future, but that's like a little challenge for me to get better at creating reels and to also kind of experiment and see what's working right now. So I also want to talk about influencer marketing, because I think this is actually a really powerful tool for artists, and I've never heard anybody in the art space talk about this before. So I maybe I've heard one other person talk about it, but not quite in the same way that I want to share with you. So I got this idea from Russel Brunson, who is considered the father of the modern sales funnel. So if you have a sales funnel or you want to run paid ads, Russel Brunson is a great resource. That's the reason that I started kind of getting into his content. But he has a book called Traffic Secrets. I will link that book in the description of the YouTube video if you're watching on YouTube. But it's just Russel Brunson, and it's Traffic Secrets is the name of the book. He has multiple books, but that is one of my favorites, and I think it's a really great starting point for new artists to start thinking about your target audience. Now, again, this is a topic that I could talk about forever. I could talk about target audiences for a really long time, and I'm sure it will come up in future podcasts, but just to kind of get us started, I think it's really powerful as an artist to have an idea of who your target audience is. That way, when you are creating content or you're creating offers or you're running ads, you have a person in your mind that you're speaking to. And it just helps to make sure that your artwork and your messaging is really aligning with that person. So I think that your idea of your target audience will kind of change and shift a little bit over time as you kind of learn more and more about your customers and the people who buy from you. And that's totally fine. I think that's normal. But the easiest starting point is to think about yourself as your target audience. This is what I did when I very first started. I took a piece of paper and I wrote down a huge list of all of my interests, all the things that I like to do, all of my hobbies, my religious beliefs, my political beliefs, anything that I felt really strongly about, anything that I was interested in. I made this huge list of all of these topics that I was interested in. And then I made a second list of all the things that I like to talk about in my art or that I like to do in my art. So I'm a painter. So I wrote down all the painting styles I like to do, all the subject matter I like to do, all of the time periods and art movements that I'm interested in, literally like everything I could think of. And what I did was I kind of cross-referenced those two lists. And I said, okay, when this is actually what I did for my very first collection. I said, okay, I like to paint. Am I seeing any correlation here between the interests and the topics that I like to create? So I said, I love to paint moons, and that's a theme that's been ongoing in my artwork for several years. So I like to paint moons. Out of this list of my interests, would other people with these interests be interested in moons as well? And I was like, well, I'm interested in yoga, meditation, music festivals, camping. I could see all of people with those same interests might also be interested in moons. And so I just started, when I'm thinking about my target audience, I just started with thinking about their interests. What are people interested in? What are other things people are interested in that they might also be interested in my art? So if you have never thought about finding your target audience before, this is a really good place to start. Just making a list, making those two lists and kind of comparing, seeing if there's any overlap between the topics that you like to create about and your hobbies and your interests. You know, if somebody else had those hobbies and interests, would they also be interested in your artwork? And, you know, I like my artwork. That's why I create it. So people like me also probably like my work. So once you kind of have an idea of these interests or of your target audience, what are they interested in? What do they like to do? You can get really specific with this. Like, I actually had a lot of fun. I created a kind of vision board, mood board of my target audience. And I just did it on Pinterest, and I put together all of these fun images of like, what do I think if I'm just thinking about my target audience as like one person, I went so far as to like name my target audience. So my target customer, her name is Natalie, and she is, into kind of like this boho hippie fashion. She goes to music festivals. She likes to do camping. She's also into spirituality and yoga and meditation, and she tries to eat healthy and take care of herself. And it's kind of like this fun little rabbit hole that you can go down. But once you have an idea of this person, you want to start to think about what are other things this person might like besides just art. So if I have my target person in mind, there's specific types of jewelry that I think that she might like. There's specific types of like boho hippie clothing that I think she might like. She's interested in music festivals, and here's a list of the music festivals she might be interested in. So then what you want to do, this is also super fun, you get to go through your social media accounts, whichever accounts you're on, and try to find some other big accounts that have similar interests to your target customer. So it might be jewelry accounts, it might be clothing brands, it might be it could be other artists, but I find I don't like to follow a lot of other artists unless I find them really inspiring, because I want most of who I'm following and interacting with on social media to be about my customers and my collectors, not so much about other artists. Again, if we think back to last week's podcast, I'm thinking about social media as a business now. I'm not thinking about it as a social platform. So I'm thinking about my customer and who would be interested in my work. So I'm starting to friend and follow these other accounts. And in Russell Brunson's Traffic Secrets, he calls this your Dream 100. So you want to find 100 accounts, and preferably the bigger the better, where you think your target audience is already hanging out on these other accounts. So like I mentioned, if my target audience, my customer, Natalie, she also likes jewelry. So, I'm following these jewelry accounts that I think she would be interested in. I'm following clothing brands. I'm following music or music festivals. I'm following hobby groups or interest groups, especially on Facebook. There's a lot of groups for like similar hobbies or, gardening or topics that people might be interested in. So you just want to get into these same places where you think your target audience is hanging out, where your customers are hanging out. And then you're just going to start making friends with people. And this is really fun. You're just going to start leaving comments. You're going to start talking to people. And just, the main thing here is that you're being a genuine, real person. You're not being salesy. You're not trying to sell your art. That's not the goal here yet. Sales actually comes from the second half of this topic that we're going to talk about next week. Sales come from the trust and connections. So if we're just talking about growth, you are starting to connect with some of these like-minded accounts. You're making friends with them. And if it comes up, if the time is right, then you can share about your work, and you can share about your art, and you can share about what you have to offer. I try not to push this. I try to be friends first, and then, we'll talk more about kind of like how to connect with people in the next podcast episode. But you're just trying to make friends with them and be friends with them. And it's just recently happened to me that I was legitimately following this creator because I really enjoyed her content. She has a much bigger Instagram following than I do. And we were having a just genuine chit chat in the DMs. She was offering a product. I was asking questions about it because I was interested in it. We had some back and forth, and I ended up being like, hey, I'd love to send you some of my art prints. Would you be interested in, getting some art in the mail? And she's like, oh my gosh, I would love that. I'd love to feature you in my stories. And that was just a very natural connection that happened without me having to like really push it or force it. But then what happens is you also get some visibility with through these other creators, through these influencers, right? You get to showcase your work to other people. And the best part is their target audience is similar to your target audience. So technically you could reach out to anybody on social media, right? You could try to friend all these big accounts just because they're big. But if their audience isn't actually interested in the artwork that you're creating or in the products that you're offering, it's not going to do you a lot of good to get those eyeballs on your work unless it's like the right type of people. So that's the thing I think that people don't understand about growth is we're not just trying to grow an audience of anyone. We really want our audience to be people that really connect with us and they really like our work. So I think that that's kind of an important distinction. It's not entirely just about the numbers. And then the last thing I kind of want to share before we head out here is you don't need a huge audience in order to make sales and in order to make connections with people. So I think that this is really misunderstood. And like I said, I think in the social media world, what I hear so much of the advice is like, oh, go viral, have thousands and thousands of followers. And yes, that can be helpful, but you can absolutely make sales. You can absolutely sell your artwork in a consistent, regular basis with a small following. So that is going to lead us into the topic for next week where we talk about creating trust, creating connections, because that is what helps people to be able to feel comfortable enough to buy, is the trust and connection side of things. And so if you have a small core audience that is, even just 10 people, if you have 10 collectors who love you, they love your work, they feel connected to you, they love all of the things that you are posting and you are sharing, that's enough. It doesn't have to be thousands and thousands of people. So I think growth is, for me, almost like a fun kind of challenge. Like, ooh, can I meet new people? Oh, can I share my art with new people? It's almost like a game to me, and I think maybe that's why I am not so worried about it, like why it's a little bit more fun, because I'm like, ooh, how many views did I have? Oh, that's so fun. And I'm not looking at it or relying on it as like a source of validation or as a as a metric for how well I'm doing, because I know it's only one piece of the puzzle. So instead, can it be like a fun game? Like, oh, can I get more views? Oh, if I do my reels a little bit different, maybe more people will see them. That sounds fun. It's just kind of this creative exploration process. So I think that's it. I hope that's helpful. I feel like we covered a lot. That was a lot of different topics kind of packed into one podcast here. So if you have any questions or there's anything that you'd like more information on, please let me know in the comments so I can do a future podcast episode on one of those topics, and come back next week so that we can talk about building trust and connections with the audience that you already have.